Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited at Workplace Options to start a new podcast series. We were recently at a insurance conference in Chicago the last couple weeks ago, actually. It's called NASB, and throughout the conference, after attending different events and speaking to many different insurance companies and organizations, we realized how people were very interested in how grief impacts individuals in their daily lives, their families, their work, how they work with their children. And so we wanted to create a new podcast series to provide more insights for supplemental insurers on how grief does impact your customers and claimants. So I'm excited to say this is going to be a new 6-part podcast series on the different types of grief, topics that include emotional pain, physical health, things like understanding pet loss, financial grief, long-term care, as well as the emotional toll that a job loss can take on an individual. So we're super excited to be here today. We do hope you find this to be educational, and we hope you get a lot out of them. But today I am joined by two amazing individuals. I'd like to introduce you to Kay Bird. Kay, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Kay Bird, the Director of Business Solutions here at Workplace Options, and I was in attendance at the NASB conference. And as Christy said, there was a lot of conversation around engaging, finding ways to connect with the policyholders, with the people, and really focus on the customer experience. Looking for ways to engage with your clients more so than just at renewal. And the topic of grief and how you can really support people and be where they are was a consistent theme that I was hearing from people. So happy to join you today and talk more about that.
Thank you, Kay. And Dr. Kinnett, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Yes, thanks, Christy. My name is Dr. Kinnett Thigpen-Harris, also known as Dr. K. Like Kay, I was a speaker at the NASB conference, and it's interesting to always hear what different individuals feel like is important as far as impacting their employees and understanding a little bit more so they can really help and support them.
Dr. Kinnett, let me just start with you. Grief it's a hard word because people struggle with it, right? And I've experienced grief in my life, and I know most people have. It impacts people. It impacts the ability sometimes just to get up in the morning and do what you need to do. Can you talk a little bit about how grief can impact an individual?
Absolutely, Christy. Grief affects an individual in profound and multifaceted ways, impacting not just emotions, but also physical health, relationships, and daily functioning. When someone experiences loss, whether it's a loved one, a job, or even a sense of identity, it triggers a complex emotional response. Grief can bring intense feelings of sadness, anger, confusion, numbness. Physically, individuals may experience fatigue, changes in sleep or appetite, or even physical pain. Now, on the cognitive side, grief can lead to difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, or even feeling disconnected from reality. It can also affect how individuals engage in relationships, sometimes leading to isolation, while other times prompting a desire for comfort and connection. Importantly, everyone grieves differently, and there's no right or wrong way to navigate it. Understanding this is crucial to acknowledge that grief is normal. It's a human response to loss, and that we need support. Whether through talking to someone, a friend or family member or colleague, whether it's through therapy or any other forms of connection can be essential to a person's healing. Now, Christy, what I will say, in addition, I'll just mention that unacknowledged or poorly managed grief can lead to serious mental health challenge. And because it can affect a person's behavior, we must also understand that it impacts individuals in the workplace. And this is where it's important because what you begin to see is there's a lack of concentration. There's probably presenteeism where people may be showing up to work in some form or fashion, but they're just not in it. Or maybe people are just calling out, which is understandable. So you see more absenteeism.
So that's amazing because I think what's tough to understand and digest from what you just said is that there's probably a lot of people out there that are experiencing grief, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't know where to go, who to turn to, and it ends up just tumbling into something more difficult to deal with down the road. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Christy.
I mean, there's statistics out there all over the place, and many studies have been done on this. Financial loss and productivity is estimated to cost companies up to $225 billion annually. I think that's the hidden sort of, if you look at the iceberg, that hidden darkness below that people don't even know that's going on. And then it erupts, right? And that pressure gauge blows, and then it's tough to come back from that. I think if you look at the different stages of grief, when you look at how it manifests itself, going back to when something happens to someone, what are the different stages that people go through?
Christy, it's so important to understand the stages of grief. So I'm glad that you asked that question. The first thing to note when it comes to the stages of grief is that it is not linear. It doesn't follow a set order. Someone might revisit stages, experience them simultaneously, or even skip certain stages. Of course, there are 5 stages. You have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. When we look at denial, this is the initial stage where individuals may have difficulty accepting the reality of the loss. Denial acts as a defense mechanism to protect against the immediate shock. It often sounds like this can't be happening, or is everything going to be fine? The second stage is anger. As the denial slowly fades, reality begins to set in, leading to frustration and anger. This anger can be directed at other people, the situation at hand, or even at an individual themselves. This often sounds like, why is this happening to me? Or, it's not fair. Stage 3 is bargaining. In this stage, individuals may try to regain control by making deals or promises in hopes of reversing or lessening the loss. This may involve a lot of what ifs or if only thinking. And when you hear that what if or only thinking, you know that you're in a negative thought loop. It often sounds like if I do this, maybe things will change, or if only I had done something differently. So you start really questioning those things. The 4th stage is depression. After realizing the extent of the loss, individuals may feel overwhelmed with sadness, hopelessness, or even despair. This is a period of reflection and emotional pain, often marked with withdrawal from others. It often sounds like, I don't know how I'm going to go on, or life will never be the same. Then the final stage, Christy, is acceptance. And in this final stage, individual starts to come to term with the loss. Now, acceptance doesn't mean I'm happy and I've completely forgotten about it, but it involves finding a way to live with that loss and adjust to that new reality. And this often sounds like, I'm ready to move forward. This is what happened and I can't change it, but I continue to remember that person. And again, Chris, I think it's so important for me to say this again, that it's a nonlinear progression. So again, it's not a set order. People may revisit certain stages and go back and forth. So just keep that in mind when it comes to the stages of grief.
I think for me, what I observed in just, again, listening to the insurers who were at the conference, they recognized that when people are making those claims, whether it's for hospital expense or whether they're now looking at member who is facing a critical illness diagnosis, they know that there's stress related to that, but they're not providing any support directly to their policyholders to help address that. And I think in many cases, I feel like there's that anxiety and grief that kind of comes together. And I don't know if that's just what I've observed with people in having conversations, but to be able to address that in advance or help in the very early stages so that people manage that grief and that anxiety better throughout the process would just be a nice version of support from my insurer to help me through that particular event.
That's so powerful. I mean, I think, again, it goes back to people maybe don't even know the symptoms, right? So when you're dealing with something that's traumatic and you're dealing with grief, if you don't try to get in on top of it and have those conversations, it might turn into something a little bit more long term. And then that's where it's harder, right? It's harder to come back from that. So, Kay, going back to your point, when you look at, supplemental insurance or insurance in general, if you look at a lot of the supplemental insurance policies that are out there, hospital indemnity, critical illness plans, people are filing claims for pretty major things that impact themselves and their family members. How do you see getting people support for this earlier on would be so beneficial as an insurance company?
Well, I think it provides an emotional connection to the policyholders beyond just like paying out X number of dollars for the claim. And it enables them to provide support somewhere along that roller coaster that Kennette's talking about to show that they really do care about this person beyond just like, will you renew with me, at the renewal date? It's kind of be there to extend a hand to help them through this roller coaster. It's just letting them know that they care beyond just, collecting their premium and hoping they never need to pay it. I just think it's showing that they really are focused on that customer experience and really trying to provide that helping hand wherever they are along that continuum. And hopefully, they've made that person know that the service is available to them and they can reach out when they know that it's available and they can reach out when they're ready to do that.
Dr. K, would you say as well, it's just being able to have a conversation, to have that ability to connect with someone that can just be there and just help you through what you're dealing with. It's not forced. It's not, you're just being able to talk to someone and help you kind of break down what's going on and have that support as you go through the different stages is extremely valuable. Wouldn't you agree?
I couldn't agree more, Christy. When you're going through grief, having someone to lean on is kind of like having a lighthouse in a storm. It doesn't necessarily fix the storm or the grief, but that lighthouse, which could be individuals, helps to guide people through that grief. Grief can be so isolating. I know that you've experienced, I've experienced it, and so many others as well, but it can be so isolating and the burden of emotions can feel overwhelming. Support doesn't just come from friends or family. Workplaces play a crucial role too. A supportive work environment with compassionate leaders and thoughtful policies can be a lifeline, helping people to navigate that loss while also respecting the need for them to maybe need additional time and space. And for that person supporting an individual through grief, remember, it's not about finding the right words to say, but having someone there to listen, hold space, and provide a sense of connection when they feel lost.
Well, I hope this has been really helpful to everybody. Today we learned a lot about grief and the different stages, and I think we're all now more well aware around how grief can impact people. It's not just the one person. It can impact a lot of different people in the workplace, your productivity, everything that's going on in your life. And so I do hope you tune in to the next episode. I hope you found this valuable. Our next episode is going to be around emotional pain and physical health. And we'll send this out so everybody can gain access to it. And if you have any suggestions, there's a suggestions box on our website, www.workplaceoptions.com. all one word. And we'd be open to more topics and information in the future that you're interested in hearing more about. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you next time.